Often in wrestling, there's stories or runs that just end too soon. It always comes with a bittersweet feeling of what could have been, and more often than not overstaying your welcome leads to others having a fond feeling of something. When The Rock left WWE in 2002, many saw him as somebody who was turning his back on the industry, and it simply comes down to Rock getting his name and opportunities from the world of professional wrestling. It's obvious why others were bitter and angry with him leaving. The fans didn't like this one bit and booed him on his way out. Even then, Rock had plenty of charisma and great character work that by the time he came back, he had them cheering again. He used the hate to fuel his new iteration, Hollywood Rock. Hollywood Rock was a much needed and natural transition, seeing as Rock couldn't play his character without the fans booing and treating him like trash. Rock was firing on all cylinders here. He made the fans look like jobbers, made fun of Hulk Hogan endlessly, and disrespected him in ways you never saw before. In addition, he still had his in-ring skills of 2002, but he wasn't going as crazy as he did a year ago. The Rock was amazing and at his very best. He outshined everybody on that roster, and the craziest part is that he definitely wasn't going all out. Hollywood Rock was a sight to see. It was like he improvised every segment of his, and within a month of his return, he was cheered again. They just couldn't hate him even though the fans were the butt of his jokes. Faster than a buck, the biggest thing to hate Canada because the Maple Leafs suck. Toronto were enhancement talent on that night, and those boos did nothing to Rock. A great mini story with the Hurricane and missed his feud with Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Austin story was a great closer, but Rock's run winded down with the return of Goldberg. He put him over and left. I do wish Rock did stay around, but there's a reason why people talk about this run so often. It's because he did so much with so little time. His best serious promo, Act 3. Austin at WrestleMania 19 was a proper ending to Stone Cold's career. The Rock concert in Sacramento was one of the greatest segments in wrestling history. It was a wonderful chapter in Rock's career. And I do ponder about a story involving Rock threatening to leave with the title in Hollywood and having somebody such as Goldberg or Booker T try to take back the title, or Rock is on the red carpet for his movie premieres, but you don't get everything you want. It was more of a bonus to what was an incredible career. Shawn Michaels' return in 2002 brought great value to the WWE, one of the marquee names in the 90s returning for one more run. HBK's run exceeded expectations, and after WrestleMania 19, he stayed around. Michaels got very comfortable not too long after returning and already becoming one of the best wrestlers in the WWE again. If you look at the 2004 roster, it was Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and HBK. He was always a guy to get a good match from, whether it was a short one or the main event. He started working some of the different names he never got the chance to work as time went on, but then came the biggest, Hulk Hogan. Hogan and Michaels is a match that nobody envisioned would happen, but 2005 was the year. Their program offered a new side to HBK that the fans didn't see. HBK was amazing. He just fit that role instantly. He'd come out with this all-white look as if he was at church and talk about the fraud that was Hulk Hogan. HBK was on point and showed a lot of fire. He'd usually show that temper and fire every once in a while, but then this turned out to be a one-time thing and they turned him face again after SummerSlam. It's very unfortunate. He had mega heat in Montreal, had the fans wanting to kill him for wanting to screw Bret Hart again. It was so good, but WWE had a face issue after SummerSlam by the looks of it, and HBK had to go back. Shawn Michaels never turned heel again, although he'd show tendencies seeing as it comes with his character, and I just think the roster never allowed for it because Kurt Angle left, Eddie died, and certain injuries occurred throughout the years. The 2000s independent circuit brought forth the best class of wrestlers to come from the indie scene. These guys all for the most part became world champions in multiple promotions, had amazing runs, and main evented WrestleManias. There was one name who didn't even have the chance to show skills on the biggest stage, Nigel McGuinness. Nigel was one of the best in-ring performers in the late 2000s and somebody who was up there with the American Dragon. He had plenty of classics and stories under his belt up to 2009. WWE were interested in signing him, but then he was truthful with his injuries and problems. Bryan lied and ended up getting signed. As for Nigel, he failed the medical and had to go to TNA. He was renamed to Desmond Wolfe. Now TNA gave him the chance and initially it went very well. He was thrown into a feud with Kurt Angle, and Angle at this point was still in great form in his career, so they meshed well. They had a wonderful feud that introduced Wolfe to the TNA audience. He got over, fans were familiar with him, and there wasn't a single problem. But then TNA changed management. Hogan and Bischoff were running the show and Wolfe fell behind. They cared more about making AJ Styles a mini Ric Flair and making the show all about them. It worked in 1996, not 2010. Wolfe was greatly affected by this, and despite Hogan and Bischoff not seeing him like others, Wolfe ended up winning a TNA title match vote over the likes of Jeff Hardy. Just think about that, Jeff Hardy. And they squashed him. 3-minute match. It wasn't all bad for Desmond Wolfe on screen, but after they said he went and disappeared to trial for Chelsea in London, yeah, he wanted to become a footballer apparently in storyline. It wasn't seen back in TNA. The guy was sick, he had hepatitis C, plenty of injuries, probably longer than the list of Sin Cara botches in 2011 WWE, and he was gone. It's very unfortunate because even though you could say TNA didn't do too well with him after Hogan and Bischoff came in, we don't really know what would have been because he was partners with Magnus, and he was featured every week. It's hard to say, but one thing for certain is that Wolfe's run is one that ended too soon. He had to retire 2 years later, and it was a cold story that establishes not everyone gets the happy ending, because for his buddies from that era, a lot of them became multi-time champions and were featured consistently on the WWE roster. I think Nigel wouldn't have done bad at all in WWE. The Divas division of the early 2010s really was all over the place. While they had certain names pushed strong, they weren't as constant as the likes of Trish Stratus and Lita. So for a time you'd see Melina on top, and only a year later she'd be released. And the stories weren't that complex too, but there came one story that stood out in a time that wasn't noteworthy for the Divas division: Eve Torres. Her story becoming a demon. Eve slowly turned heel in the beginning of 2012 after displaying some terrible traits. She cheated on Zack Ryder and said it was to advance her career, managed to drag him back in only to turn on him again, and then becoming the assistant GM. Eve was always finding some way to put herself in better positions, and naturally you'd expect that to come to the squared circle. She ended up being the mystery attacker for Kaitlyn, having swooped in and stole her title shot to become the Divas champion. Eve was basically a passionate reader of the 48 Laws of Power book. She appeared friendly at one point with Kaitlyn before taking her out when she least expected. She lied constantly, accused others of attacking Kaitlyn, and it was the best character work seen in the Divas division in years. This was a story they clearly put effort in, but then Eve decided to leave WWE. They asked her to be a part of the first season of Total Divas to give her a long thought out departure to document on the show, but she declined. Eve would have made a lot of sense for Total Divas. This run ended from out of nowhere, and I think there was a little more that could have been done. Eve didn't have that kind of interest anymore, and her run just ended from out of nowhere. It's not often in that era of WWE for you to see two huge factions, the Shield and the Wyatt family. With the Shield, they came up from out of nowhere, and within a month of their debut, were a very notable part of the show. It was a perfect storm, a trio with all the upside in the world. The Shield did well for themselves in those few months, but they always matched with makeshift teams. As for the Wyatt family, their run was strongly centered around Bray Wyatt as opposed to the Shield having no leader in their group. When both sides met once, the fans exploded just on the chance that they'll face off. It was an incredible sight to see, and WWE took notice and gave them a big match at Elimination Chamber. This match was incredible and one of the best six-man tag team matches in WWE history. It was explosive, intense, all the words to describe this one, and it was so good that WWE did the rematch the following week. Other than that, the Shield and the Wyatt family didn't last for long. It should have gone down differently. But we're glad that it happened, otherwise we'd be complaining that it didn't go down. It would have been better for it to happen at WrestleMania because that was a perfect time. Batista faces Brock Lesnar, John Cena faces The Undertaker, and we get this match at the Big Show. One of the most bittersweet inclusions in this entire video. A run that highlighted just how hard it was for this person to return to the spotlight: Batista. When WrestleMania 21 came around, Batista and John Cena were placed side by side with Batista having a slight edge. The animal was in incredible form and was only getting better. Batista learned how to work better, and by 2008 he was having consistently good matches. The issue with Batista was age. He was much older than Cena and at the same time suffered from injuries. He had a bunch of injuries set back what was already a legendary career. And I think these injuries should be highlighted more when talking about his career because he could have been more. He returned in 2009 after 2 injuries in 6 months, but fans didn't care about him as much as they used to. So WWE decided to turn him heel. It was a much needed change that Batista himself enjoyed a lot. This heel turn allowed for more freedom, and Batista was up for it. He exhibited a bitter character who felt entitled and rarely would throw a tantrum about it. It was all about the execution. While Batista was a heel, he was still presented as scary and somebody who the roster for the most part wouldn't dare messing with. You're supposed to be my friend! He obliterated Ray, sent him to the Shadow Round, all for doing the great sin of trying to win a match and a world championship, okay? Great heel turn. He's complaining about Ray doing his job as a tag team partner, and that feud really helped present Batista's new heel character. And again, Ray had to get humiliated, obliterated, destroyed and all that, but it really works because it presents the heel as a massive bully. The animal was great. He even got a huge match with John Cena at WrestleMania 26 out of it. A great story with Batista not understanding why WWE placed the then 9-time champion in the #1 position as opposed to him. And there was a lot of fun and entertaining segments out of it. By the time the feud ended, Batista was in amazing form, but he was gone. He disappeared and had a great conclusion, quitting out of anger and frustration with Bret Hart. Batista's departure left a huge hole in the WWE. In some ways, that had a greater effect than the departures of Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, because Batista was a super top heel, and him hopping back to SmackDown and taking care of that main event scene would have helped the roster greatly. I think WrestleMania 27 involving Batista changes everything. It makes a lot of sense for it to be Orton versus Batista with the animal playing the heel role, but man, what could have been with 2010 Batista? It also would have offered him a chance to change his face character as well. Fast forward 4 years later, a return that many craved had come to fruition, but it wasn't what people hoped for. But Batista was back. WWE didn't get the memo though that this was the Daniel Bryan show. Batista had a good reaction upon his return, but once people realized he was the answer to Randy Orton, everyone turned down his run. It was rough and WWE was forced to turn him heel. It was a bit awkward initially to turn him into the villain role, seeing as he was supposed to be this hero that was going to win the title in the main event of WrestleMania. The return was horrible, he tired out quick, but on the positive side, I feel like Batista had some things going for him. It felt like a revamped version of his 2010 run. That quote where he says, "What the hell happened in this place?" was very memorable and also presented him as a great villain at the time. The guy known for the old type of wrestling, refusing to understand why the likes of Dolph Ziggler, Daniel Bryan, and others appealed to the modern audience. He got very comfortable as a heel, which is something that Batista wanted himself upon his return, but WWE was like, no, you'll come back as a good guy, as a face, and everyone will cheer you. And if it was 2015, 16, they probably would have, but you guys know what was going on at the time. He did main event WrestleMania on the positive, one of the bigger WrestleMania main events in WWE history. He didn't win the title, obviously, but featured in a great feud against The Shield along with Evolution, and he left. Batista ended his run on the positive, and obviously he was gassed out. He wasn't as good as he was in previous years, but on the character side, well, he had a lot of awkward moments. There was a lot of good. He had some good promos later on. The clothes he was wearing were outrageous and funny and fit the character. And I feel like Batista needed a lot more time with both of these runs to present himself in the best way possible, because he shined bright at WrestleMania 26. Like, that was the peak of that heel run. But then it just ended from out of nowhere. So there's that. When Brock Lesnar won the Universal Championship, everyone fully expected the Reign of Terror. It came naturally, seeing as Brock rarely appeared in his last title reign. And the question at this point was, why would that change now, especially when he didn't have anybody to take the title from him except Roman Reigns? And they're not going to do a Roman Reigns match at SummerSlam. They're looking to do that for WrestleMania. WWE decided to make the Intercontinental Championship more of a valuable prize while Brock was away, and in the meantime, they set up a #1 contenders match. Samoa Joe won the opportunity, and immediately this feud felt crazy. It was something that almost promised to bring a different side of Brock Lesnar. Joe was always hungry during this time period, so there was no way that it would disappoint, and it didn't. Samoa Joe had this unwavering confidence that was solidified after overpowering and outsmarting Brock in their confrontations. It was a wonderful build because it was sold on the idea that Joe no-sold the threat of Lesnar. Everything about Brock Lesnar meant nothing to Samoa Joe, and the only person who showed fear in these confrontations was Paul Heyman, because he knew what Joe was capable of. The match was very fast and entertaining, and while we would have hoped for Joe to win here, it was never going to happen. The feud had a lot of legs on it, despite that finish with Joe telling Brock that he had him down for the win, but it transitioned to include Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman. I wish this went a bit longer with the focus on Joe and Brock, because those two really had something good going on in a time which was very dull for WWE. That intensity and aggression from both men, it was nice. Their match, as good as it was, felt like one where they were saving everything they had for the rematch. I still like that match, but they were doing that one and done thing with Brock Lesnar's title reign. It was a very interesting dynamic, especially after Goldberg rattled Brock months earlier, and they could have done something with Brock having to face this strong adversity after having to deal with Bill Goldberg. The American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes. He embarked on a brave journey outside of the world of WWE and ended up discovering that he was a part of wrestling history. A small bet over selling a 10K arena led to the creation of All Elite Wrestling. It showed that wrestling had something else to offer in the United States, and Rhodes naturally found himself as one of the major stars of the new promotion, seeing as he was a notable name on the Indies, ROH, and of course a member of the most popular faction other than Bullet Club, the Elite. I almost can't believe Rhodes was strongly a part of the Elite, but I remember it very well. He wasn't the best wrestler around, but he definitely had something to offer. Nowadays you hear less of it, but I remember a lot of people didn't understand the hype of Cody Rhodes from the years of 2016 to 2021. They used to call him the 3-star general if I remember correctly. Nonetheless, he was the biggest face right before COVID. There's this iconic image of him in Atlanta on top of a steel cage, and it was a great moment, but we didn't know that his AEW run peaked here. Rhodes made the mistake of booking a story that involved him never challenging for the title, and in some ways, he booked his demise as it relates to AEW. His stories were notable, but they gradually decreased in quality, and it felt like there was a Codyverse similar to the Bloodline Vortex. Rhodes wasn't doing some amazing work, but he showed up for his matches. The issue I have with this run is that it almost promised an incredible payoff. Rhodes had something different about him with his character. He wasn't the exact same guy that he was in 2019. Fans booed a lot. He was very eccentric, almost too eccentric for a face, although that doesn't clearly indicate someone's a heel. For the most part in wrestling, it does. It almost felt like he was too self-aware to not see that the role he was gonna have to take was that of a heel. But then Cody cut some strange promos and ended up dropping the TNT Championship to Sammy Guevara in a great ladder match. He didn't want to renew his contract and ended up leaving for WWE. It felt like his run didn't scratch the surface nor do anything for his rivals. Brody Lee did well for himself in the story against Cody. Malachi Black's thing was not much in the long run, and Sammy Guevara, along with Brody, seemed to benefit the most. But this is a run that I wish lasted a bit longer, just enough for him to explore the dark side that clearly lies within the American Nightmare. Best of all, it's very unfortunate that he didn't interact with any members of the Elite since early 2020. Every one of them changed. Hangman experienced betrayals and setbacks, overcame them. Matt and Nick Jackson fell into an arrogant path, and Kenny Omega sold his soul to make sure he had his name in the AEW World Championship history books, and yet Cody didn't talk to a single one of them in a segment or have a match against them. This all was an accident, of course, but one has to wonder how Cody's run would have gone down if he stayed. It was the best time to leave because he didn't have that strong of a pull in creative, and also had the fans booing him, but wrestling as a whole is different if Rhodes decided to do his natural to the stories of All Elite Wrestling and turn heel. And it's something I do wonder about because the WWE run is good and I wouldn't really change it, but But if we're talking literally and honestly, his AEW run ended too soon. Now, if he wasn't going to turn heel and change it up, yeah, it ended at the correct time. But if they were going to do that, it would have been good. All right, those are wrestling runs that ended too soon. I think we had a good list here by the looks of it, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I did. All right, what you guys think of these runs? Please comment down below. And that's the first video. Make sure you hit the Batista bump, the like button, and perhaps the crossroads, and the subscribe button. Peace. I'm at.